So we have that. And let's talk about Mary Ann furnace, if you would like to. I will, yeah. So I got introduced to Mary Ann furnace in about 2007. Mary Ann furnace is on the property of now Hanover State Park in Hanover, Pennsylvania. And you're going to hear the story about how things were done out there to research some of the history. And a couple of the key people who were involved in that are actually in the room tonight. You see the number on your screen, the 36YO419. That actually is the official archaeological number for Mary Ann furnace. 36 is Pennsylvania, YO is York County, and the Mary Ann furnace site was the 419th site in the Pennsylvania Historical Commission's database. So anything that was found archaeologically that was labeled had to have that number on. So this is what a furnace is: a structure in which a natural material is placed and using some kind of heat and air, a product is manufactured into a usable substance. A lot of times furnaces were associated with a forge, or actually maybe a forge was associated with a furnace. And that's where a location where a material is produced into its final product using heat and molds. In the case of Mary Ann furnace, that is true. There was also a forge right next door producing the final products. So that you will see today. Let me grab so this is a park map of Hanover State Park. And I'll give you a little background. This is called Lake Marburg, which is in the state park. Hanover is to our north there above the picture. Black Rock Road is coming down kind of out of the South Hanover area. And you will, if you can read the fine print, Hanover State Park does have a Mary Ann furnace trail. In fact, there's a historical plaque sitting at the ironmaster's house about at the boat launch about right here. But nobody really knew exactly where Mary Ann furnace was. You will see this notation here about the Rummel Farm parking. The Rummel Farm did come up for sale, I believe, in 2006. And the state park jumped on that opportunity to add to their acreage by buying up the Rummel Farm, which I'm kind of outlining with my spotter here. And it was believed that Mary Ann furnace was on the Rummel Farm, someplace. So anyway, the superintendent of the park at that point in time, Warren, contacted me. He said, "Can you come up and do the project for us to try to determine where Mary Ann furnace may have sat?" So I did accept that challenge. Here's a closer view of the trail system, Mary Ann furnace trail. There actually is a Mary Ann furnace parking lot trailhead right here. There's actually a new one down at the Rummel Farm parking lot. But anyway, Mary Ann was very well documented into the parks, even though nobody really knew where the Mary Ann furnace sat. This is what a kind of a cross section of a furnace looks like. You basically load material from the top down, and you do have a wheel, either an overshot or undershot wheel. In this case, it's an undershot wheel where the water's coming under to drive it. And you have a blast machine and you put charcoal, limestone, iron ore into the furnace in those layers, and eventually your iron will melt and it will come running out the bottom where you have sand casting to make it into pig iron bars or actually into usable iron that can be then taken over to the forge and produced into its final state. So one thing that we looked at was how did other furnaces operate? What did they have? Okay, so a couple area furnaces that we kind of keyed in on was the Caledonia furnace up at the Caledonia State Park. Some of you may have been there, located between Gettysburg and Chambersburg, 1837 to 1863. It was burned by the Confederate soldiers when they came through Caledonia heading toward Gettysburg, and apparently never reopened or rebuilt. So when we looked at the Caledonia furnace, exactly what did they have for their facilities. Of course, the Pine Grove Furnace, State Park, Pine Grove Furnace, started in 1764. Very, very early furnace. And they've done a great job restoring a number of the structures, including this is the furnace, the wagon house. This is the iron master's house. Every furnace had an iron master's house, usually built on the hill overlooking the furnace so they could watch the workers. I think, since I'm the boss in the Zoom rock room, I should live in the iron master's house and let Brittany try to take it away from me. In York County, we had Cador's furnace near the Cador's Creek in the Susquehanna River. That's been restored by the local York County Soil Conservation. Margarita furnace is down near Windsor. The York furnace, which is now actually buried under sediment at what we call Otter Creek. Manor furnace was down near Felton. And of course, Mary Ann furnace out here in southwestern York County. Here's a picture of Cador's furnace. Again, kind of an early furnace, 1765 it started. And it's also known as the Hellam Iron Works and the Hellam Forge. Like I said, it's been restored now, and does have a little, very, very short self-guiding walking trail. Manor furnace down in southern York County looks like this today. It's just a stack of rocks remaining, hardly visible anymore, unless you know where to look. And I had to put this in for our friend and room member, Paul Fagley. That's his love of his life, Greenwood Furnace up in Huntington County. And 1837 to 1904, Greenwood operated. That's a wonderful place to go if you're in that part of the state. Stop by Greenwood Furnace. They have lots going on there and a lot of preservation that's been completed, and it's a fascinating little place. I found this interesting just when I was putting notes together. The legislature in 1726 and 1736 prohibited the sale of liquors at any public house within 2 miles of a furnace. Because we all know what the furnace workers did if they weren't at the furnace. They were at a tavern or a house drinking. So they issued these acts. I just kind of found it a little funny. So to operate a furnace, like I said, you need the main ingredient, which is iron ore. You need limestone that was a flux to take out the impurities in the iron. And the first furnaces were supplied, the heat was supplied by charcoal. Okay. Later they became a coal burning when coal became a major resource here in Pennsylvania, but the early ones were charcoal. So furnaces were kind of built where you had those three available resources. For example, Pine Grove Furnace, sitting there in the valley, in the beautiful valley, there was iron ore just around the furnace. Limestone was there in the valley. And charcoal, hey, we have all this forest around us. We can easily make charcoal. So in York County, these are iron mine districts in York County that we've identified. Over 170 different mines were working in York County from 17 70s to about 1910. So in York County, we did have a wealth of iron ore going on. And you see the Pigeon Hills down here by Hanover. This was a key supplier of the iron ore to our Mary Ann furnace, which sat right here. So we know that was documented in the history books. Iron ore came from the Pigeon Hills, the Mary Ann furnace. This is what one of the iron mines, iron banks, as they were called, looks like. Many farmers' ponds, as I call them, are iron mines or banks today. So they call them banks because most of them, they were actually digging into a bank to dig out the iron ore. Limestone here in the York County area, where we have Route 30 and Route 116 from Wrightsville to York to Hanover. That's our famous limestone valley. We certainly weren't short of any limestone resources to act as flux. And to make the charcoal, you had, of course, the deforest. You had to cut the trees down, pile it up into a pile such as this, about 10 to 14 feet high. The idea was that you did not want to burn the wood, you wanted to smolder the wood. And 1 acre of wood, 1 acre of forest, it took a team of charcoal makers about 8 to 10 days to produce 1 acre of charcoal. So they had to be there all the time. This is a burn before it got covered up by dirt, because again, you do not want to burn the wood. You want it just to smolder and turn to charcoal. So you put dirt over the entire pile, light it from the inside out, and let it smolder. And if you got a hole in the dirt, you had to climb up and close that hole up so it wouldn't catch fire. So again, 10 to 12 days it took to make 1 acre of charcoal. But it took a furnace operating at a good rate about 24 hours to eat through your 1 acre of charcoal. So charcoal terraces, wherever you had a furnace, Greenwood, Pine Grove, Mary Ann, you had charcoal terraces all through the area. So this is one over at Middle Creek Wildlife Refuge, which is famous for the geese migration in March. They actually have a gristmill trail. If you go up the trail, you will see that you get to a flat area where it's been dug out. The soil is black. You kick the dirt, and there's pieces of charcoal still laying there for the nearby furnace that was just over on the other mountain. So Mary Ann furnace. It's proclaimed as the oldest charcoal furnace west of the Susquehanna River. I showed you the dates of other ones, and again, with technology, again looking at other furnaces. This is down at Oregon Ridge Park, down in Maryland, north of Baltimore. This is their map of where the various houses, buildings were. Here's where the furnace still stands. There's their forge. And then they had boarding houses and manager's house, the iron master's house, barn, going on, spring house, the graveyard. So Oregon Ridge did a phenomenal amount of archaeology over the years to mark these sites and to verify the site. So highlights from Mary Ann furnace started in 1762. Okay, by George Ross, who was the signer of the Declaration of Independence. Mark Bird and Mark Thompson got involved in the enterprise. As I said, it's the first charcoal furnace west of the Susquehanna River. It did produce cannon shot for the Continental Army with George Washington. So they made cannonballs and cannons at Mary Ann furnace. They also made cast iron stoves, which we have a visitor in here tonight, Andy Huffman, who has an incredible collection of things from Mary Ann Furnace. And we think Mary Ann Furnace, again, based on documentation, stopped operation in 1801. So Mary Ann Furnace kind of stopped operation when some of the other bigger, larger furnaces were starting like to get cranked up. So this is what the property kind of looks like. Part of the Rummel farm. Codorus owned over into the trees was where the Mary Ann Furnace Trail ran, and that was the end of their property. But again, this is the Rummel farm looking west and north. And I really do contend, in fact, I have some documentation that there actually was a little village called Mary Ann Furnace. There's nothing left of it today, maybe except for a schoolhouse. But we found some documentation in the Hanover Library of people that were born at Mary Ann Furnace. So I contend someplace on this property, and I have a theory that there were some tenant houses. We know where the ironmaster's house, which is a half-mile up the road. You can't see it from here. But here's some of the cannonballs that were retrieved, mostly in the creek, in the Codorus Creek, and they made grape shot, and they made a 4-pounder, and they made a 12-pounder cannonballs at Mary Ann Furnace, along with the artillery for George Washington. As I mentioned earlier, this is the Pigeon Hills Iron District. Wasn't really far to bring the iron ore from the Pigeon Hills, 4 miles, and actually there actually is an old roadbed still visible within Codorus State Park in here, of where they brought the ore to Mary Ann Furnace, which is about where my spotter is now. Also, there was a couple of iron mines in South Hanover that, again, according to the iron mining books of York County, 1874, some of that iron ore was used at Mary Ann Furnace. So when we read the history of Mary Ann Furnace out of the Gibson History of York County book, he said Mary Ann Furnace is located along Furnace Creek. Now that's a pretty good statement, right? And where's Furnace Creek? Well, it's easy. Get your topographical map out, and right here is Furnace Creek, which is not the area that we're saying where Mary Ann Furnace is today, which is right here. But we did realize, again, doing more research, and that word research keeps coming up, doesn't it? But we did find out that at one time, the west branch of the Codorus Creek right here was called Furnace Creek. This was then became the west branch of the Codorus Creek, going into Lake Marburg, and the creek over here, one to the west, was renamed Furnace Creek. So that kind of made us a little bit more comfortable that we're looking over here instead of looking over here. Yeah, right there. So more research in the Hanover Library, Pennsylvania room. We found this map of the 1800s of the John Huntsinger property, and look at that. The Mary Ann Furnace is on the map. And look at that, there's the west branch of the Codorus Creek. It's not quite flowing where it is today, but it's in the neighborhood. Black Rock Road, a driveway, maybe. So that was a kind of a major thing that we found that really helped us along. Well, and we started to play with the boundaries of the present day boundaries of the park and the Rummel farm and we were trying to fit the Huntsinger property into the Rummel farm, and it quite wasn't fitting, which is not unusual. But we, this is what this is what it would look like today if you superimpose the property, the Huntsinger property, onto the Rummel farm. Again, Black Rock Road, the driveway, and maybe the Marianne furnace sitting right there. This is the Rummel farm actually sitting right here. So as I mentioned, they made stove plates. At the Cador State Park has the Hanover Historical Society just completed what I understand is a beautiful display on the history of Marianne furnace, which I need to see. But here's a stove plate, George Ross, Stevens, and Thompson on it. So there are a number of these floating around in collections, or as I said, at the Cador State Park office. There are several, and I think they have a complete stove sitting there now. So you might have heard of LIDAR in the other programs that we have done. LIDAR is the light detecting aerial reconnaissance, meaning that you fly over with an airplane, you shoot light down to the ground, it bounces back up into the plane, it's measured in seconds, and it actually maps the surface for you. It's looking at the land surface 3D, plus it's taking away all your structures, the houses, the forest. It's just looking at the land. So for a depression 8 inches or deeper, or 8 inches or higher in elevation, it's going to see it. So Black Rock Road I keep talking about is right here. This is the Rummel driveway that does exist. The Rummel farm didn't sat right here, but this right there, I contend, is the roadway coming from the Pigeon Hills through now Cador State Park to get the iron ore in and the products out of the Marianne furnace. Shows up really well on LIDAR. So LIDAR, we looked at LIDAR. In fact, this was the first project that the Pennsylvania Geologic Survey used LIDAR in any research in Pennsylvania. Was Marianne furnace. Very new in 2008. And our friend Rosanna Baird, that's going to play a role in this in a second, introduced us to LIDAR, and she did a lot of work with the LIDAR. So we went on a walk, Rosanna and I. We walked the Rummel farm. We looked at the topography, because for a furnace to load it at the top, you need to have it. You need to have a hillside behind it, so you can build a ramp out to the top of your 13 to 15 foot high stack. So you needed a pretty steep hillside. So we basically walked the Rummel farm looking for prospective locations just based on that criteria. And there were a couple on the west side of Cador's Creek. And there was a really ideal one right here on the south side of the driveway that we kind of earmarked. And here is Rosanna, and she was here the other week and did her program with sinkholes, you might remember. And she had just gotten this magnetometer with the Pennsylvania Geologic Survey. Magnetometer is a deluxe metal detector, but it's very sensitive, it's very accurate. I could not be close to her because of any metal I had on her might affect her work, but it all put it on a SIM card, and she would take the SIM card back to the office and plug it into the computer, and it would show data such as this. So these are all passes that Rosanna did while I was sitting in the car eating donuts. And the red is iron. The yellow is not so much iron. The green is really nothing. So again, I've been referring to the driveway. The driveway is down here at the bottom. And this is pretty much a wetland today. So where the Cador Creek used to flow, it's now a wetlands. And you see there's some lineation of some iron in here, and a lot of orange on the south side of the road, which turns out to be a material called slag, which was the waste product of a furnace that was taken off the furnace and dumped. Here's a little bit of a better one. Again, here's the Rummel driveway, Black Rock Road. Again, you see some patterns of iron, although some of these turned out to be fences. There are some red areas around the driveway. Now, could that be junk that was dumped by the Rummels as in trash? But there's one suspicious one right here, right under Black Rock Road. There it is. Very suspicious. See, furnaces, when they produce iron, some of the iron actually leaks around the joints of the rocks and leaks out on the side or underneath the furnace. And that iron will cool and turn into a solid substance. And they are called salamanders. They're huge hunks. They might weigh, what, 5, maybe even 10 tons of iron that are just wasted. And I contend, my theory is that this is a salamander of a furnace. This is where I think Mary Ann Furnace sat, under the public road. Now, that's going to be debatable here when I get closer to the end of the program, because of something that just happened in the last 6 months or so. But we put our bet. This is the highest iron area. This is where the furnace sat. Plus, there was some other positives in the area. My high would be sitting under Black Rock Road, right close to here, about here. But on the south side, the west side of Black Rock Road, it's all slag material, junk from the furnace, burnt rock they took out. They had to dump it someplace, and they were dumping it the whole way, like a quarter mile from this point up to almost to Lake Marburg on the west side of Black Rock Road. Now, we know that Black Rock Road has been located several times. And when they built what Hanover State Park was called Project 70, Black Rock Road was moved. Okay, so again, Rosanna and I actually did a creek walk, and she is standing on an old roadbed of a previous Black Rock Road. In the banking, we could see charcoal and slag layer here. And so the west side where I'm standing right now, it was all the waste. This hillside is on the east side of Black Rock Road. Just my salamander theory is located right in here, under the road. This hillside is full of charcoal, iron ore, slag, bricks, and that's the only site on the whole Rummel farm that contains all those artifacts. So really, I think the light's going off here. This is it right here, folks. And they loaded from the top of the furnace that sat out here along or on the road. As we were walking the Rummel farm, we did find evidence of humans. This is called yucca. Yucca does not grow, it's not native to Pennsylvania. It has to be brought in and planted. And this is in the middle of a cornfield in the area that I think was what we would call Mary Ann, the village of Mary Ann Furnace. So this could have been somebody's front yard where they planted a flower bed. That's again a theory. I have no proof. We have not done any archaeology up there to prove that. So an overall view, this is what the furnace would look like. Okay, here's the loading ramp from the top of the hill. And let's say Mary Ann Furnace is sitting on Black Rock Road. There is a stream providing water for the wheel to be turned. This is the casting house and the forge right here. So this is what Mary Ann Furnace may have looked like. It did have some structures on top of the hill that were where you kept the charcoal dry, the limestone dry, the iron ore dry. And before we did any archaeology, we actually brought in the local metal detecting club based out of Gettysburg at that point. We invited them down for a day and you guys metal detect for us and tell us, indicate where the most iron is. And maybe that's where I'm going to plan to do our archaeology. So you see all the red flags, this is where they found the iron. It got to the point that we started not to flag every little point because it was just too much. But we were able to kind of step back and look at the area on a wide angle and say, well, most of the flags are over here. There's not so much over on this side. And so we could plan our archaeology out. Where are we going to dig? So we did all this searching, a lot of work before any shovels hit the ground. A lot of interviews with the Rummel family themselves. They grew up there. We actually did find out that Mr. Rummel was selling his cannonballs as Civil War cannonballs, but they were really Revolutionary War cannonballs. So he could have probably gotten more money for them if he would have advertised them as Revolutionary War. But because of Hanover being in the Gettysburg area, he wanted to market them as Civil War cannonballs. We interviewed a lot of the longtime locals, number of local historians. Everybody had their stories. Everybody had different stories, and it's a lot of information. One story we did hear was that the spring house, which is no longer standing, nor is the house, the bricks in the spring house came from the furnace. We have not proven that. There is actually a test that could be done by somebody who knows what they're doing to find out if they've been refired someplace else. But that's not been done. That's just one story that we heard. So all the work is done. So then now to get approval to do an archaeological project, this is what we had to do. Okay, we had to get approval from my employer, York County Parks, because that was going to be part of the Archaeology Week program in the summer that I had done. We had to get the backing of the park staff to support such a program. Through the state parks, we had to go to DEP. State parks, of course, had to support our approval. And then the Pennsylvania Game Commission got involved because of the wetlands that were on the property. We weren't going to dig in the wetlands, but it was right near it. They wanted to know if we're going to ruin any habitat, like for bog turtles, for example, is a big thing. So we had to submit to that we weren't going to disturb any of that. We had to secure our volunteers from our county parks and the state park friends group, and to get the site number from the Pennsylvania Historical Commission, which is an application that you have to do also. So in the summer of 2006, we take the archaeology kids there, not to dig in 2006, because things still were just developing, but we took them there to do what we call a surface survey of the area. So we divided the 24 students into, I believe 6 teams. We sent each team a different direction and gave them the limits of where you can go. And you guys look on the surface for any artifacts you can find. And I didn't give them a hint. about where we were, what we were expecting to see. I just said, find artifacts. So they went scouring around and they went to our hillside here, and they brought back the appropriate things I was expecting to see: charcoal, iron ore, limestone, some iron iron pipes or iron implements, unidentified, just pieces of iron that certainly were artifacts. They brought back slag. I know Andrew had a couple pieces of slag with him tonight, but the slag was brought back. Here's an iron piece and another iron piece, unidentified what they really were. But one student brought back this. It just took me out of my shoes. This is a projectile point about 6,000 years old. And I know exactly where he picked it up. He showed it to me. He showed the location to me, so I knew, because that just totally was unexpected. So there may be there may be a stone tool site within Marianne Furnace area. We have not found any other evidence of that. So archaeology began, and in 2010, and just going to show you some pictures of the archaeology working right beside Black Rock Road. We had snow fence up between the road and the squares, as they were called. Here the students are measuring. Anybody who's ever done any archaeology, it's just not grabbing a shovel and starting to dig. It's very controlled. You take a lot of notes. You take a lot of pictures. Progress is very, very slow. Here's our teams. There's the snow fence on Black Rock Road, and every square had a screen. They were screening the dirt. This is actually 2009, 2010. But they were screening, having a good time, getting totally dirty. That's what it was all about. So they were using a trowel and a dustpan to remove the dirt. You take the square down level by level, like every 2 inches, and you square and you get the floor all level before you go any further. And you record any artifact that you might see in your square before it goes to the screen. Here's one of the Cadorus Park volunteers. He worked hard. I guarantee you. I had to get him out of the square a couple times, let the kid to get in there. But you see, he's down about 3 feet and hitting this dark dirt sort of thing. We did some excavations on top of the hill where we expected that the loading ramp was. What can we find up here to help us along? Again, you see the blackness of the dirt from charcoal, most likely. Here's one of the volunteers and a student screening. Again, they're on top of the hill near the loading area. We were hoping to find maybe rocks that represented a foundation, something really clear cut. That did not happen. One of the students is measuring down how deep they are. Okay, so again, these children, which were 9 to 12-year-olds, learned how to do archaeology. They were doing the real deal. More screening. Here's note taking. Teams, my square leaders were instructed to get their teams to sit down at a certain time in the morning and the afternoon, sit down and write notes. Just write what you're finding, because they come in handy when it comes to the point where I have to put a report together. So this is some iron ore. This is called the limonite or goethite, taken out of both the Pigeon Hills or the iron mines in South Hanover. Pieces of charcoal. Again, these are labeled. This is a square 10 artifact number 2. If you go to the database on our parks computer, you can get information about that. Where was it found? And it was square 10, obviously, but how deep was it found? Or was it found in the screen? These are pieces of limestone. So again, as a geologist, I can identify in some cases where this limestone came from, may have came from. What formation did it belong to? Because some of it is characteristic of a certain area. Iron was all over the place. This is probably like a gate hinge. Again, you see the number on the artifact, 36Y0419, square 5, artifact number 73. But we catalog, we wash all the artifacts. Here's part of an iron pot. Always have a scale in your picture. More iron. That could have been stakes or some kind of bar. More iron. Here's an iron piece in place. They excavated around it and we took a picture of it. Square 11. That's artifact. That was the 0804 means August. Artifact number 4 in August. We were there in July and August with different groups. Here's part of a stove plate. We didn't find a complete stove plate. That would be a marvelous find, but we did find several pieces of stove plates coming from the area. Again, slag, very, very common. We actually did do some squares in the slag area west of the Black Rock Road just to see maybe how deep it was. When you see slag that's like this, it kind of means that the furnace wasn't operating at its maximum. It was kind of a sick furnace. Some pottery that was found. Here's a brick that was found in square 7. Here's another brick that was also found. We didn't find many bricks along the way. And soil changes sometimes were very, very valuable. Okay, this is actually showing you the charcoal layer. And we know the furnace shut down in 1801. So we surmise that this is the top, this was the surface of the land at 1801. All this other stuff has been added on top of the charcoal layer since 1801. So when we're doing the excavations, particularly the square leaders, adults are watching for soil change more than the students are. And and what we were ended up with on the squares down by the road, this is kind of what the depth of the squares where we got down to some cases like 3 feet were like this. Sandy, dark, had a few rock pebbles in it. So we have kind of concluded that this was maybe where the water channel was flowing. Probably after it left the wheel to supply the air to blast the furnace. So we think we were in the water channel for most of these. So anyway, as I mentioned before, the salamander picked up on the magnetometer, which is right there. And very recently, and thank you to the West Mannheim Heritage Committee and Andy Huffman, who's in the room tonight. Andy, can you hear me now, or can you talk now, Andy? I don't hear him, okay. But thanks to Andy and that group, Harold, they sponsored a ground penetrating radar survey that was done last fall, I guess it was. And they hired a company to come in, GeoView, to come in with their GPR, ground penetrating radar, and scan Black Rock Road at my salamander. And they scanned several areas in the field in the area. Surprisingly and dejectedly, I got to admit that the ground penetrating radar did not pick up anything under Black Rock Road. Now, I'm not quite backing down on my theory on that one, but it did not pick up on the GPR. It did find a couple of things with GPR. I think maybe the highlight was maybe where the water came out of the creek heading toward the furnace.
Right.
Is that you, Andy? No.
Yes.
Oh, you have okay. You have an echo with you. So, am I right by saying that you may have found where the race was?
Yes, I had to go to another computer, so I got
Okay.
that one's got sound.
You want to? You just want to conclude this with a little bit?
The what we think we found is two parallel lines, maybe 6 to 8 feet apart, buried maybe 2 feet underground. That just, it appears to be the remnants of stone walls that could have been the race carrying the water over to the water wheel. So and it's in the right location, so we're just going to try to follow up on that. So it's pretty exciting to stumble into that when we weren't looking for it.
That's right. Okay. And we thank you for that information off the cuff, and thanks for supporting the project. Because there's a lot more work that can be done at Marianne Furnace with the support of the state parks and sponsors like the West Manheim people. So, and there's the logo for the West Manheim Heritage Committee. If you got into the room early tonight, you heard me talking to Harold. They had a meeting today. They're back in session. They meet at the West Manheim Township Building on this particular Tuesday. So it's a great group. So this is what the Rummel Farm driveway looks like today. The house, actually, this is an older picture. The house is now gone. The state parks did tear it down because of vandalism. And there's actually a parking lot up the driveway and to the right. That's what they call the Rummel Farm parking lot. And they have actually extended Marianne Furnace Trail across the top of the hill right here over to what's the existing trail. So if you want to go to the Marianne Furnace site, this is what it looks like. The furnace site sat about 50 yards to your right here along the hillside. So I'm getting a little tired. We had a blast tonight talking about the blast furnace. You see that relationship? I guess you have to understand my humor. So firework time and a great night to be an American and be able to do what we went to when we went to and have a lot of fun. So I'm going to come back to y'all. There we go. That's the Marianne Furnace story at this point. Okay. A lot more, as I said, a lot more can be done. Me being retired from New York County Parks, there's no more archaeology programs going on. But I don't see why the Hanover Park eventually could get a program going that would concentrate on Marianne Furnace either. So anybody have any questions? You can unmute yourself.
Jeri, that was really a great undertaking. Good to see all those people involved. Nice job.
Yeah, it was great summers for me to see those. We had 48 students a summer.
That was super. Nice to see all those people involved. Very good. Way to go.
Made my job easy. Anybody have any questions about Marianne Furnace?
I saw you had that one map of Manor Furnace. I believe that's the furnace that the slag that I have here
Oh, is it?
came
Okay.
from. Yeah. Hold on. Some really neat curvy stuff on that one.
Yeah, I believe that's down in Chanford Township in York County. That's the one that my famous story I don't mind telling people about is I knew Manor Furnace was someplace down in southern York County, and I read about it, and it didn't give me any directions. And a gentleman who lived in that area down there, he used to be involved in Indian Steps Museum, heard I was looking for Manor Furnace. He actually called me up one day. He said, "You want to see Manor Furnace?" I said, "Yeah, I would love to." So he gave me directions to his house, which is very close to where the furnace was. In fact, he owned the property at one time, a Manor Furnace. He took me up the road and he turned left onto Manor Furnace Road. I said, "Ah, you dummy! You didn't. That never connected with me. I heard a Manor Furnace Road." And the picture I showed you was the one that we saw. Basically just a pile of rocks now. But there's a lot of slag on the other side of the road by the stream. So yeah. All right. Yep. You can always, as I call slag, that's the number one candidate for people that find slag. They think they found a meteorite. And I've made trips 15, 20 minutes away from my house to go visit them because they think they found a meteorite in the slag, and you should see the expression on their face. What was the connection with William Thompson? He, of course, was one of the three owners at one time that bought into all this. Andy Huffman would probably know more of the personal history than me. But I'm just reading over some of the other comments. Andy, you want to answer that question about Mr. Thompson? No, we can't hear you again. All right, one of the comments in the chat room, I'm reading the chat room. Somebody noticed that in one of my archaeological slides, there was a sign adjacent to a grid pit which states Chuck Norris Iron Fisted Funeral Company. Later in the week, we left the kids name their square, whatever they wanted to call it. And so that was Chuck Norris Iron Fisted Funeral Company was what they came up with. Okay. Did any of the students become geologists or archaeologists? The best I know, there's one geologist out there, and archaeologists. I had worked with, actually my last year, I had worked with a girl who was going to become an archaeologist. She actually was going to Indiana, Pennsylvania, I think, for archaeology. But I think I influenced a couple of people. I know I did. The book that I wrote about the Isabel and Trent's hot air balloon adventure over Pennsylvania. Isabel, if I'm not mistaken, Brittany, you know probably better than I do, but Isabella is going to Colorado School of Mines to be a mining engineer, right? A petroleum engineer. And she actually last week just got engaged to get married. So her life is going downhill.
Can I just tell this story real fast?
Yeah, go ahead.
The man that she's engaged to, they met in the Central Pennsylvania Rock Club when they were both about 10 years old.
Oh, wow.
So their love of rocks kept them as friends, and now they fell in love and they got engaged.
Okay, I didn't know he was a member of the club.
Yep.
Okay.
For a long time since he was young too.
Kenneth has said, who's Mary Ann? I don't know that answer. I do know there were 2 other Mary Ann furnaces in Pennsylvania, which we took some, we had to clarify some things with that too. There was a Mary Ann furnace in Brooks County. And there was another Mary Ann furnace in Western Pennsylvania. So when we were talking about Mary Ann furnace, we had to make sure that we were talking about our Mary Ann. But I never saw anything about who was Mary Ann, why was it called Mary Ann furnace, sort of thing.
Jerry, let me jump in on that here. Although I can't say specifically, generally, if a furnace had a feminine name, it usually was either a wife of one of the owners or a daughter.
Oh, okay.
Sometimes the wife. And I know with Peter Schoenberger, who owned a lot of furnaces, he named a lot of his after his daughters.
Okay.
So that's probably where it came from. If you did genealogy, you'd probably find a Mary Ann somewhere among the owners, the original owners.
That'd be a good project.
Yeah.
Yes, it was
Jerry?
definitely, one relative was Mary and another one was Anne. I'm not exactly sure. I don't remember. I'd have to look it up. But it might have been a wife and a mother, I believe, or something like that.
Okay.
So they got Mary and Anne. Yeah.
Right.
And not only that, very often the namesake got the honor of quote unquote striking the match to light the furnace for the first time. And it usually was done on a Sunday.
On a Sunday.
On a Sunday, usually done on a Sunday, not always, but the tradition was on a Sunday.
Huh. All right.
Jerry?
Yes.
Jerry?
Yep.
This seems to have been a lost furnace. It sounds like that for a long time it didn't exist. And how did people know about it before that? Are there written records somewhere of the furnace activities? Is that how it's known
Yeah.
today?
Written records. The history of York County, both by Gibson and Prow, discussed Mary Ann furnace. Like I said, there were records in the Hanover Library, in their Pennsylvania room that documented that. Andy Huffman here has found some incredible detailed records of production and all that he shared with me.
Yeah, we found 20 journals and ledgers that were housed in the Pennsylvania State Museum in Philadelphia. And we've got those digitized, so we actually have copies of them. We can look at them at any time. And they're dated 1763 to 1770s is the only time those records exist.
That's I understand. Paul Fagley.
Yes.
My name is Greg Dovey, and I worked at DGS with the Greenwood furnace. I don't know if you remember me, but I was project coordinator for the new visitor center up there
Okay.
back 20 years ago.
Yeah.
So nice to hear you're still around.
Oh, I am for a few months yet. I'm actually looking at retiring in the end of February. So I just about have my time in.
Well, good for you. You've done a great job up there, and appreciate all your efforts to keep the history alive up there. And the site is great job you've done.
Thank you.
Oh, yeah. One last question I have on the chat room is what's the predominant iron ore? It was limonite or goethite is what was coming out of the Hemlock Hills or Hanover. Picture behind me tonight actually is the back side of the Iron Master's house at the Pine Grove Furnace. And in fact, the archaeology kids are behind me there. when we toured Pine Grove Furnace.
I'll
So
just throw one more in here, Jerry, if I could.
yep.
You're talking about the slag. A lot of people think it's meteorites and such. I have a funny one. Years ago, I had this gentleman at the park, and he came up to me at the end of a program, and he was from Texas, and he had his 10-gallon hat literally filled with slag. And he said, he showed you, he says, "What is this stuff?" And I said, "It's furnace slag. It's waste product." He goes, "I knew it was too good to be true." He said, he thought it was flint. He saw the black slag and he thought it was flint. And then he started finding the green slag, and he started saying, "Oh, he never heard of green flint." So that's when it started questioning it. And he literally thought he found the mother lode of flint. He said he couldn't believe it was in parking lots, trails, wherever. He couldn't believe we let it lay around as rare as it was.
It's not very rare, as you know.
Nah.
There's actually a professor up in New York State who would analyze slag and tell you
Kim, I can't talk to
the
her.
chemical composition of that slag. Different colors are different chemicals too. So there's many avenues that you can take off all this. So anyway, that's the story about Mary Ann Furnace. And Brittany, do you know why the ghost took the elevator?
I don't.
He wanted to lift his spirits.
There you go.
That's what I want everybody to do this week, is lift your spirits. And not sure what the future is holding with our COVID deal going on here again. I won't get into the politics or any of that with anybody other than Brittany. But we're here for you every week and through August anyway, and then go the first and third Tuesdays in September. And we enjoy, at least I enjoy, seeing all your faces every week. And we had 30. I saw 33 people at one time in the room, so that's very good. And I think you're gonna enjoy some of our future programs if those folks come through for us and present programs from pretty well-known spots. Okay, Brittany, I'll hand it back over to you. You can end it all.
Alrighty, I agree. The upcoming programs look really good. I'm glad that you're on the mend, Jerry. I think I speak for the room when I say that we're all glad everything went well. And it's good to see everybody, and we'll see you next week. Take care.
We'll see ya.